Welcome everyone to the Self-Centered Podcast. My name is Ezekiel, and on this show, it is our mission to help you achieve a more joyful and fulfilling life. We do that by discussing the 4 pillars of a fulfilling life: finance, fitness, faith, and friendships. Today, we're considering the question, what does it take to get sober? Is it the stories that we tell ourselves? And if we examine those stories and modify the stories that we tell ourselves, could that help us on our journey towards sobriety? I'm very happy today to bring you a special guest. This is a good friend of mine, Gilberto Rodriguez. Welcome, Gilberto.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to reconnect with you, Ezekiel, after so many years on much more positive terms.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, just so our audience and our viewers know, you and I go way back. We've known each other for a little bit over 20 years now. And when we first met, we were at a different phase in our lives.
Right.
I was in college, and you're a little bit younger than me, but we were working at the same place.
Yes.
It's kind of a party phase for both of us.
Exactly.
But I do remember we were working in a fast-paced environment, very busy all the time. And what stood out to me about you is you seemed different. It seemed like you were very hyper-aware, very observant, and you really paid attention to what was going on, and you were able to adjust to situations. Right. And that's part of the reason that I stayed in contact with you all this time. But it has been a couple decades, and we did lose track of each other for a little bit. You kind of went your way and I went my way, but we reconnected a couple of years ago, and I was just fascinated to hear about your journey and the things that you've gone through, the things that you've accomplished, the experiences that you faced. So thank you for being here. Currently, I do want to let our audience know, and our viewers, our watchers, listeners know that you and your 2 brothers, Jaime and Victor, you guys own
Legacy Groundworks.
Legacy Groundwork, company here in Colorado, and you guys do landscaping and commercial construction, residential construction as well, right?
Exactly. We create outdoor living environments for commercial settings, residential, custom builds as well. So
Excellent.
Do it all.
All right. Yeah, and I've seen your work, and it's top notch. I can't recommend you guys enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So, before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where did you grow up, and what was that like? And at that point in time, did you ever see yourself doing what you're doing today?
Going back just a few years, right? I was born in Mexico, born and raised. I was brought to the United States at a very young age. And then we went back, actually went to school there. At the time, it was my mother and I. My dad was in the United States working and providing for our family down there. And so, we went through some hardship, but, there's always opportunities. My parents, were very ambitious and very aware of what they needed to do, right, to provide. And so I appreciate them for that. But we came back to the United States. My father's reasoning to bring me here was to learn English and to learn martial arts. So those are 2 great things that have opened many doors for me. And, I'm just loving the journey.
Yeah, excellent. Great. And you know what? You and I have a lot in common because my family is also from Mexico. Right. I was born here, but it was a Mexican cultural home, right. Culturally Mexican. It was a little difficult for me growing up because at home, there was one culture, and then when I was out in the community, out at school, and in the rest of society, it was a different culture. So, that was it was challenging for me at times because I kind of felt like, I don't fit in here, I don't fit in there. Right. Did you have any similar experiences?
I can definitely relate to that. We have very deep roots, of course, for getting many, many generations. And so those are things that we'll never forget. We'll carry those traditions and beliefs and all that with us throughout life. However, going to school here, society, everything is just, the culture, everything's so different. And so you feel like you don't belong anywhere. I felt somewhat of a floater, right? I had different types of friends, but at different times. But deep down inside, I felt like I wasn't being myself. I couldn't be myself, and so yes, I can totally relate.
Yeah. It's interesting because some of the things that came about, at least for me, and I'm curious if you relate to this as well. But growing up in a Hispanic family, Latino family. There was a lot of machismo, at least in my home. Yes. And growing up and being a Latino male, you couldn't really show too much weakness. You couldn't really show emotion. You couldn't really ask for help if you were struggling. And I think that led to a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges. Now that I'm in my 40s and I'm looking back at that, I can see that caused some unnecessary challenges.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think most men can relate, to what you just, what you're talking about. But being, from a Mexican background, I believe it's just stronger. It's heavier, right? You have there are expectations, even unspoken expectations, right? Like you said, you're not allowed to show weakness, to express your feelings, to talk about your emotions, and you're expected to do certain things that possibly aren't the best, right? I think we'll be diving deeper into this, but drinking is one of those things where the more you drink, the manlier you are, the more you can handle, and so that just opens up a can of worms, right? So many other issues that come along with that, just because we're not willing to let go of certain things in our belief system or culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, looking back at those times now when I was growing up and with all these years that I've lived, and I kind of realized that oftentimes in the Hispanic community, there is a lot of alcoholism, some drug abuse, and I think that might be one of the causes of it, is that, we can't really be in touch with ourselves and, be honest with ourselves or show anyone that we're struggling. So we turn to substances, turn to alcohol, maybe some drugs, just to kind of help us cope or mask those emotions, those feelings, instead of, dealing with it in a healthy way.
Exactly.
And then again, when I was growing up, I would see people that I looked up to, and like you said, they were drinking and they were partying, and I thought that was cool. I thought that was, the way to be cool and to fit in.
A lot of conditioning, right? You grow up. I was having this conversation with my daughter just yesterday. I grew up seeing, beer on a daily basis at our home. My dad would say, "Hey, go get me a beer from the fridge," and so to me, it was normal to have, beer and alcohol around the house, and seeing the grown-ups drink, and teenagers started at a very young age. I started drinking when I was 14, for example, and so it's just the conditioning, the normalization of beliefs and habits and the ways that we live our lives. A lot of times, like you said, we look up to certain people that they haven't healed from their past issues or past traumas or childhood situations where they're numbing themselves, but we think they're socializing. We misinterpret the whole situation, right? And so we begin to mimic, certain things, certain actions, picking up on habits, picking up on belief systems that weren't necessarily ours to begin with.
Absolutely. So true. So true. And it's, throughout the culture. I mean, you and I, we both listen to the same type of music.
Yes.
I love listening to Mexican regional music, and I still listen to hip hop,
Right.
And in both of those genres, even though they're so different, there's a lot of drinking and drug use, and during all occasions, if you're having a good time, you want to drink. If you're, not having a good time, if you're depressed or upset or sad about something, then you want to drink. It's just very widespread. Growing up, if I was to look at celebrities and musicians, that was kind of the example that I saw was, the drinking and the partying.
Right. Yes. I mean, that's just another way of normalizing certain things in society, right? I mean, yes, there's a cultural factor, but I think society as a whole, you'll see commercials on TV where people are at the beach, but there's always a drink in their hand. Right. And so that just implies that you cannot have a good time without a drink, without an alcoholic beverage. And so we believe that we're missing out on something if we're not drinking. Now, with my background, with everything that I had to go through and the healing that I've been doing, I'll think back, I'll reflect, and I'll ask myself, I wonder what that artist was feeling when he wrote that song, how much pain that person was in. And so, without knowing, we're picking up on that pain, right? Just by listening to the song, by singing the lyrics, it's all there. It's like picking up other people's pain and you're adopting it as if it was yours. Yeah. And so we begin to repeat these patterns, and not only that, but we pass them on to, our children and just people that surround us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Such a good point. Yeah. So you mentioned that you started drinking around the age of 14.
Right.
Again, when we worked together, both you and I, we were into partying and drinking. So when did you realize that you had to stop drinking? It wasn't going to work for you.
I had, throughout time, I had, the thought came into mind, man, do I have a problem? It was a question. But, just as quickly I would dismiss it. No, I don't have a problem. And I would keep drinking. Until I started noticing heavier drinking in my patterns. I needed more to feel a buzz. And then people around me, my dad would make comments, hey, you gotta bring it down a little bit. And so there were red flags that I just kept ignoring. By the time I knew or realized that for sure I had a problem, I tried quitting. I think I tried for almost 3 years, on several occasions, and I would only get to, 2 or 3 months, and then I would relapse. And I would make promises to my wife, to myself, to my parents, and this time I'm really serious. I'm gonna quit drinking. And I wouldn't get past, a few months. And every time I would relapse, I would get heavier and harder, and I would just dig a deeper hole, right? Until finally, my wife was ready to walk out on me with my daughter and my son at the time. And I was tired. She was tired. I was tired. One morning I got up, I woke up, hungover, and I got on my knees and I prayed. I said, okay, this is out of my control. I need help. And not only that, but I reached out to a client friend of mine, and I opened up for the very first time in my life. I opened up and I did what I was not supposed to do, ask for help. And that turned everything around. The compassion, the love that she showed me and demonstrated me, I think that was the tipping point for me. I went to a therapy session. I went to an AA meeting back to back. I met some, pretty cool people there that had been sober for many, many years. And that just opened my eyes, and I realized that it was possible. After that, I dove into books, meditation, walking out in nature, and just a whole equation of things that I began to experiment with. But I think the common factor is that I got to know myself, and that's where the healing began.
Yeah, so interesting. And thank you for sharing all that. I do want to touch back on something that you said where you would tell yourself that you didn't have a problem.
Right.
And I think that's so important for us to realize and to notice and examine those stories that we tell ourselves, because I can only imagine. So you started drinking at 14, and maybe you were in your late 20s, early 30s.
29 years old.
29 years old, yeah. So all that time, and you were telling yourself, oh, I don't have a problem. I can handle it. But I think that is such an important realization to make, when we can be honest with ourselves, and then from there, that's when we can start making changes. I believe. Would you agree with that? Or
totally agree. I believe it starts with like we talked about. It's the narrative, the content of your story. What are you telling yourself? At the beginning, I would tell myself I didn't have a problem, and so I continued on that same path. It wasn't until I changed the narrative, I changed the way I would look at my life, and until I said, what, I do have a problem. I need to be honest with myself. I need to do something about it. I need to change if I want my life to change. And so it begins with ourselves, being honest, and it's very painful. And I think that's why many people avoid it, because being honest with yourself takes a lot of courage, and asking for help. But that's just the gateway to a whole different world, and that's where the magic begins, when you're ready to really commit and make those changes.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to fall back into our old habits. I mean, I don't drink anymore either. It's been about 6.5 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Nothing against people that do have a drink every now and then, but like for you and me, it's not for us.
Right.
But I remember back when I used to drink and party, and it was just so easy to fall back into those old ways based on the people that you surround yourself with. Like we were just talking about the music and the movies and everything that we consume. Right. It's super simple to get back in that old routine and not make meaningful change.
Yes.
So what would you recommend to folks that are listening or watching now if they feel like they do want to make a change, if they want to make lasting change, what's the number one thing that you might recommend to them?
I think if you're having doubts, if you're questioning your drinking and the amount that you're drinking, that is a seed that is waiting to germinate and grow. That is a seed of change, right? If you're beginning to question yourself and you catch yourself thinking that, it's time to take action. I think, like you said, it's our association. Go to work. What do we talk about at work? Talk about last weekend and the football game and the drinking and what are you doing after work? What are you doing this weekend? And it's always around socializing, but there's always alcohol involved. And so I think one of the biggest changes is really changing the people you hang out with, but also what are you putting into your mind? What are you ingesting? What does your diet look like? Whether it's content, music, the people that you're hanging out with. What are you doing with your diet? And I believe it's just this whole bundle of habits and lifestyle changes that you need to make for the magic to really happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great point. Again, thank you for being so honest and sharing with us. I do want to touch a little bit more on the addiction piece of it, because oftentimes it goes hand in hand. You know, you're drinking and then it can become a slippery slope, especially nowadays with marijuana being legal. And people have different opinions about it, but some people say, hey, that's a gateway. Then it leads to other drugs, other substances. So you were also using other substances, right?
Yes, cocaine was a big issue for me. And it all began with, the people that I was hanging out with. And I wanted to be like my older cousins or my older friends. And, one thing leads to another. And then pretty soon you're caught up in that circle and you can't leave, right? You can't leave it just as easy as you fell into it, right? Because you get hooked. And then you don't have an example. You don't have an example of someone that's done it before. And so you don't really know where to go. You feel a little bit of ashamed to ask for help. You're made to believe that you're weak if you're asked for help. And so it's really hard to find an outlet, a healthy outlet that is, to, replace those negative habits and those addictions. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And I think that is just, such an interesting part of your journey, because, we know alcoholism is tough, but, cocaine is also very addictive. So the fact that you were able to, get sober, and it's been how many years now?
8.5 years.
8.5 years.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep. And again, I want to go back to the point that you made about the people that you surround yourself with.
Yes.
I know Napoleon Hill has a quote, and he says that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with.
Exactly.
I found out, the hard way also. I had to cut off some people, in order to do what I wanted to do in my career and in my life. Yeah, so true. The people that we hang out with, they have a big impact on us.
Exactly.
And
it's very important to really pick and choose who you want to be around. When we're in school, you're just kind of thrown into a classroom, and now those are your friends, immediate friends, because those are the people that you're hanging out with. You leave school, you find a job. Now those are your friends, because those are the people that you're interacting with. We need to be more intentional with who we choose to interact and hang out with, which is why I'm here, right? I like to, surround myself with like-minded people, leaders in different industries, thought leaders, and just people that are not only growing but uplifting others. And so it's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I know we both have kids.
Yes.
And, my kids are teenagers, so I tell them all the time, pay attention to the people around you.
Yes.
And, always question things. If people are drinking or doing drugs, question that. Why is that necessary? Is it, oftentimes it's because they don't like the way they feel, or they don't like their current situation. And, the drugs and the alcohol, it's only going to temporarily mask those things.
Yes.
So I tell my kids all the time, if you feel that way, that you need to change something about yourself, then make a lasting change. Don't cover it up with drugs or alcohol.
Right, that's only temporary. And at the end of the day, you're taking that wound and you're just kind of making it worse by only masking it. It's like you said, it's not lasting change, and so it's always going to linger. It will always be there on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, back to your journey towards sobriety. And another thing that I find so fascinating about your story is that, you did a lot of this yourself.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that you did a lot of self-examination. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looked like, how that worked, and how that helped you?
Of course. I mean, it's not an easy process. I'll put that out there for people that, are thinking about it or have tried it, or if you've done it, congratulations. But like I said, I went to one therapy session. Therapist gave me some really good insight, things that I did not understand about addiction in general, about, the human biology. And then also, I went to an AA meeting where I was able to listen to testimonies from other people that had gotten sober, that had been sober for years. One gentleman looked at me and said, that the pain, the regret, the shame that I see in your eyes, I felt it before. and I couldn't even speak after that. I felt like crying. I had a huge knot in my throat. So emotional because he could see right through me. He could see the pain that was he could see the desperation behind my eyes, and so it was very painful. I went to those 2 meetings. I went home and I made a promise to my wife. I made a promise to myself. This is it. I'm done. But I knew I had to take action, right? And so I replaced music with YouTube motivational videos. I replaced music with podcasts, flute music. So I started, without even understanding what I was doing at the time, I started eliminating triggers, which is music. We talked about that earlier, right? So certain songs would remind me of certain people, certain places, certain events, and it would trigger the desire to drink. So I began eliminating triggers. No get-togethers, no barbecues, no parties, certain music. No, I wouldn't. I quit watching TV. I mean, I don't watch TV. To this day, I'll watch a movie with my kids once a week. But I'm very, very picky, very particular with what I put in my mind. And so meditation was a huge tool. I recommend meditation to people out there that are trying to make some changes. Also, reading. I began walking, 1 to 5 miles a day, year long. It didn't matter how cold it was, right? I would have a cup of ginger tea, which is another thing that I did. I replaced one thing with another. I would always have tea with me, right? I replaced the other drinks that I was drinking before. I started shedding pounds. I felt different. I looked different. I would think and process my thoughts differently. And so that began that domino effect. One thing led to another. I began to give myself an opportunity to explore who I really was. I realized that I love photography. Another thing that, with a Mexican background, men are not allowed to express their creative side. Right. And so photography was a huge thing for me. Poetry, I love to write, to draw. And so I began to let myself be who I truly was, right? And that, I think, was a huge factor in my recovery.
Yeah, so interesting, so interesting. And you mentioned meditation.
Yes.
Did you take a course or, learn from someone?
Actually, I began with guided meditation videos on YouTube. I think YouTube was a great tool. It can be a distraction. It all, same as social media and all those things out there. But I used YouTube and I would look up, guided meditations and began that way. Pretty soon I was just doing my own meditation by myself in a quiet place, in nature, listening to the birds and, a stream. And then I did take a course. I went to a transcendental meditation coach in Boulder and actually got the whole training and a mantra and I love it. I don't do it as often as I'd like to. I'm not as consistent as I used to be. But that was a great foundational piece of my sobriety.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I tried meditating in the past and I couldn't really get into it. But I think I understand the concept, the theory behind it is really just to kind of slow down, right? And just kind of unplug a little bit because, we live in such a fast-paced society that, it seems like we're always, getting pulled this way or that way. And then, that might lead to stress and then, stress might lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
Again, I don't meditate, but I do a lot of cardio and, when I'm running.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't really think about anything else, just breathing.
Exactly. That's, I tell my daughter, she's going on for her 2nd degree black belt in Muay Thai. We were just having that conversation where, we go in, we do Muay Thai, we do our kickboxing combinations, and it's like a meditation because you're fully present. You're taking your body and you're moving and you're striking and you're not thinking about anything else. You're fully present. And so, yes, cardio, weightlifting, those are other great tools to help you be more present.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So for the folks that are watching or listening, your path towards sobriety, what I'm hearing is, started with being honest with yourself,
yes.
Examining the story that you're telling yourself, if it's a lie that you're telling yourself that you are okay, maybe you are okay, but maybe you're not. So examine that story, and then just really kind of prune down your associations.
Exactly.
Figure out who are you spending time with. Is that a good influence for you? in what you're trying to accomplish or not.
Right.
And same thing with, taking care of yourself physically, right?
Exactly.
Meditation, and like you said, you would walk.
Right. Physical activity, being present, appreciating, being grateful, I think, which goes hand in hand with being present. When you're present, you're able to really process things, really listen and feel. And, a lot of times we're afraid of feeling those emotions. Like you said, we're pulled in many different directions. That can lead to anxiety. But if you're able to take 15 to 20 minutes a day to really slow down, it kind of just filters all that, right? And you feel lighter. So therefore you perform better, you show up better for those that you love as well. And so it's just a great tool to be able to be present and not just kind of try to cope with temporary fixes.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. So, okay, you started making these big changes in your life, and then you stopped drinking, you stopped the cocaine.
Right.
Did you have any relapses along the way?
Thankfully, no. I did not relapse. I went through a phase of depression. I had suicidal thoughts, lots of anxiety. I would lock myself in a room and I would just cry for hours, not understanding what was happening. Now I just think it was my body letting go of all that pain that I had been holding on to. And I would give myself permission to do that. I would almost enjoy the crying, the releasing of all that energy, because I was just carrying all that baggage with me for so long. So it wasn't easy, but it did help me really reshape the way I felt about emotions, the way I approached my emotions and my feelings, and began to question, whenever I felt angry, why do I feel that? Why did I just go off on my wife? Why did I make that comment? It's not okay. And I started catching myself. And I believe that comes with, self-reflection and being honest with yourself. Is that okay? Is that really contributing to a healthy marriage or a healthy relationship? And so I began to catch myself and making those changes progressively.
Yeah, so interesting. And thank you for sharing that, because if our viewers or listeners, if they're struggling and, they are experiencing these things, then I'm sure that, it might be comforting for them to hear that if you're crying, if you're depressed, if you're having suicidal thoughts, then it's part of the healing process, right?
Exactly, part of the healing process. And a lot of times, especially when you're having those type of thoughts, ask for help. Yes. Right? I was able to work my way through it. I believe I was present and aware enough to understand what was happening. I was letting go of certain things, processing emotions and traumas and things like that. But I believe that if you're really in a dark place, ask for help. That's very important. You reach out to someone, make a phone call, send that text. But it all begins with that, right? In the process of going through depression and anxiety, it got better as the weeks went by. And once I hit my 5-month mark, I was like, I made it to 5 months, and I would celebrate those small wins, and I began sharing my sobriety journey with everyone. I was very open, and I think that was also very helpful for me, because not only was I celebrating what I was achieving and accomplishing, but also I was opening up, and I found that more people than I ever thought had a similar situation, or either personally or someone that they loved. And so that just opened up a door to have all these conversations. And I think that was also very helpful for me.
Wow. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. I think that's great advice for folks. Definitely ask for help, reach out to someone. And then, like you said, sharing your journey, sharing your struggles. I mean, that might help with the support of the people around you. And then, also, thankfully I've never had addictions, but, I think that there's times that we're going to mess up and we're going to relapse. And, like I've done with workouts, I say I want to do a workout, I want to get ready for a marathon, and then I don't do my training.
Exactly.
But we can always start over.
Exactly.
Always start over.
It's never too late. Like I said, I didn't, once I got sober, September 11th, 2015, my sobriety date. After that, gratefully, thankfully, I never relapsed again. But for the first 3 years, when I started trying to make these changes, I relapsed many times. And I'm just so grateful that I didn't quit, that I kept at it, and I asked for help. That was the turning point.
Yeah, that is so key. Asking for help, and then sticking to, what you decided to do, and just not giving up. Exactly. If there's bumps along the road, then you start over.
Exactly. You aim and you shoot again.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that's a fascinating story. And again, thank you for sharing that, your journey towards sobriety. After you got sober. Then I know that you're happily married, you have 3 children,
Yes.
and a successful business. So it seems like you got over that hurdle of addiction.
Right.
But then you had another life-changing event happen, right? You had a health issue.
Yes. Actually, I was diagnosed with lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus, about almost going on 3 years, and that put hit the brakes on my life for sure. Began with some joint pain. I was working out normal, and then I began feeling joint pain, and it just progressively got worse and worse. We couldn't figure out what it was. They thought it could have been lymphoma, a type of cancer, and so it was a really hard time. I finally figured out it was lupus. I got on medication, but I felt like I was on my way out because of the pain, because of the unknowns, because of the way my body changed. I lost 50 pounds in a month. My 5-year-old son would tell me that I looked like a skeleton. I was so frail, so skinny. I couldn't walk more than 5 minutes because of the pain. My body would just shut down. I would vomit. It wouldn't take physical activity well. I couldn't eat anything. My muscles in my throat were giving out. I couldn't bathe myself or shower. I couldn't dress myself. So luckily I had many people around me that loved me and appreciated me. My wife. I love my wife dearly. I couldn't have done it without her. My daughter, my boys, my parents. I had a great team, my brothers, lots of friends that showed love and support. But it was a really hard time.
Yeah, I definitely can vouch for how hard that was.
Yes.
I remember looking at pictures. I think you posted some pictures on social media.
Yes.
And it didn't even look like you. You had lost so much weight.
Right.
Because the whole time that I've known you've always, tried to carry some muscle. I know you like to lift weights, but you said you lost 50 pounds.
50 pounds.
And you just look so frail. And, I can't imagine how difficult that was. Here, you get over one hurdle, life's going great, everything's going well. And then you get hit with this, with this diagnosis of lupus, right?
Yes.
So what was going through your mind? How did you persevere and get healthy again?
Yes. Well, luckily, God had prepared me for this, right? Going through sobriety, that built my backbone. It built, I grew thicker skin, a stronger mindset, and I feel like I was well equipped because when that happened, my first thought was, I'm so glad it's me and not my wife or my kids. That was my first thought. I'm so glad it's me going through this and not one of my loved ones, because I think that would have been more painful for me. And so I think, we go back to the whole, the story that we tell ourselves. And so you got to be quick. You got to catch yourself before your mind makes up that thought, right, for you. You have to catch it. And so I was grateful that it was me. But, while I was going through pain, I felt like I was being burnt alive. Those were the feelings that I was going through with before I got on medication. The flare-ups. My body would just cry uncontrollably, shaking. I felt like I was being burned alive, and I couldn't walk. I depended on other people, and so I had to keep a certain mindset. Right? I came up with a mantra where I would say I won every time I would get over a coughing session. I had these coughing periods where I would cough for 5 to 10 minutes nonstop, and I would finish. Completely drained and burned out, and I would sleep for the rest of the day just from that because my body couldn't handle that, right? But every time I would get over those periods, I would say, I won. And so I told my wife, whenever they call me to give me the good news that I do not have cancer, I'm going to say, I won. And so, sure enough, when they called me, pick up the phone, you're clear, I said, thank you, I won. Because I knew that it took that type of mindset, it took that energy from me, right? So I had to do what was best for myself.
Wow, so interesting. Yeah, and such a struggle. I can't imagine going through all that.
Yes.
But yeah, so then you found out what the illness was. They discovered it was lupus, right? And then you started I know you made a lot of changes to your diet.
Yes, I had to. When you have an autoimmune illness, you're limited to what you can eat because of the inflammation, the pain, the flare-ups. And so I was already trying, to take care of myself and my diet, but this just kind of pushed me to even be even better. I went gluten-free, sugar-free as much as possible. Eat a healthy diet. It's not a perfect diet, but I tried to eat processed foods as least as I can, gluten-free, sugar-free, whole foods, protein, things like that. I haven't had a soda or an energy drink or fast food in going on 10 years,
Wow.
by personal choice, even before my diagnosis, right? And so this just kind of pushed me to another level.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's excellent. And another fascinating part of your journey is that this. You said this was 3 years ago when you were at your most sick, right?
Yes, that's right.
And I know that it was it last summer, just about 6 months ago, that you were in a men's health and fitness competition.
Yes, last summer it was 2023. I entered a men's fitness magazine, a contest. I submitted my photo. I was in good shape at the time, so I said, I'm one to try many different things, right? Mm-hmm. And so I submitted it. They accepted it. That was mind blowing for me. And so I kind of left it alone. But my friends and family, great community, they continued to vote, and I made it to fourth place.
Wow!
Yes.
Wow! Number 4
yes.
in the entire country,
right?
And that was just 2.5 years after?
2.5 years after my diagnosis,
wow.
yes.
Yes. Wow, yeah, so that is impressive. And I think the most impressive thing about this is that you're sharing your story so yes. that other folks know, hey, Gilberto did it. These are some of the techniques, some exactly. of the things that he was telling himself to change his mindset, to change his perspective. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story, because I'm hoping that this can help folks that might be struggling in whatever it might be, exactly. Not necessarily addiction, but right. Could be in any area of their life that they're struggling. So,
pursuing a goal, pursuing a career, things like that. I think the way the mindset that you adapt is going to be the foundation of it all, right? And I think whether it's trying to get sober, which is a huge thing and something that I'm sharing openly, because I'm trying to be who I needed at the time when I was trying to get sober, but I had very few people to look to and ask questions. And so I'm very open, because I know that it's a huge problem in our society.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And, I do want to move on, because we do talk about the 4 pillars of a fulfilled life here.
Yes.
Talked a little bit about fitness, but I know that you've always been into fitness, yes. pretty much. You mentioned when you were a child, you were doing martial arts.
Correct.
What does fitness look like in your life now?
Well, it's a huge pillar, like you said, one of the 4 pillars in my life. And I try not to go more than 2 or 3 days without working out. Mm-hmm. I get a little moody, I get anxious. It's a huge part of my life. And I think I've reached a point where my body needs it, which is a great place to be. It's not easy to get there, but you build that with consistency and discipline, right? You get to a point where you feel like you need it. It's a part of you, because like I said, it's a meditation, and your body really needs it. So now, I practice Muay Thai. I'm an intermediate level, and also a coach at Trans Martial Arts in Longmont, best school in Boulder County. And shout out to Master Tran, my good friend and mentor. I've learned a lot from him, and so martial arts is a huge thing. I began doing Savaki karate in Boulder. I've done Kempo, Mehi, Taekwondo, and then Muay Thai, which is my passion. And then I also lift at home. I do some CrossFit circuits. I love burpees. Yeah. That's my go-to. Whenever I don't feel like really working out, or I don't know how to begin, I just drop to the floor, hit a few burpees, and I get going. And so that's kind of like my secret weapon against excuses. So
yeah, no, that's great. Yes. And you could do burpees anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Anywhere. Excellent. So with Muay Thai, I know combat sports is very good for men, yes. Because it helps with testosterone levels and just having that interaction and that camaraderie with exactly. other men. Would you say that's been key to you?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, when I began to recover from my lupus diagnosis and began getting on medication, my daughter earned her black belt, first degree black belt in Muay Thai, and that just motivated me. She inspired me. I love my daughter so much, and I thank her for that, because she's a hard worker, she's very talented, and she's a great martial artist, great Muay Thai athlete, and she motivated me to get back into it. And so it's a huge thing, because like you said, physically your testosterone levels go up the roof. I mean, in a single workout, 45 minutes, you're burning anywhere from 500 to 700 calories. So you're going to get fit, you're going to grow your discipline levels, your self-confidence, you create friendships and bonds. I mean, with a good training partner, that's just a long-lasting friendship, right? Mm-hmm. But also, it prepares you. You never know when you'll need, your self-defense skills. I think many men, believe that they can fight, but I think it's very important that we get in the ring and maybe spar a couple rounds and really find out what you're made of, because, in your mind it's one thing, but when you're applying it and using your body and moving, it's a total different story.
So true. Very true. Yes. Great. All right. So The next pillar of a fulfilled life that we like to discuss here is faith.
Yes.
So what does faith look like in your life?
Faith, I mean, I don't consider myself a religious person. I was brought up Catholic by my family, obviously being born in Mexico, but we were never really churchgoers, not on a regular basis. And so another thing, I began to read and explore other philosophies and religions, and taking what I could use from each one and kind of building my own relationship with my higher power, right? What we call God, or the universe, or whatever, however everyone else sees it. And I began to strengthen my faith muscle by going through all these challenges and really, adopting a good mindset and knowing that I'm not alone, right? I never felt alone in my journey while I was getting sober, while I was getting through those hardships with my illness. I never felt alone. And I believe a big thing is being present and really feeling that connection, because I believe we all have a connection, but sometimes it's too loud in our heads and we're not able to hear that or feel it.
Yeah, and I think that's so key, just to have that faith, that belief in something greater than ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I'm a practicing Catholic, so I work on keeping that connection with God the Father, with Christ the Holy Spirit,
right.
and yeah, I find that is very uplifting to me.
Yes.
Keeping that connection, keeping the perspective that, hey, there's more out there.
Exactly, it's very important, and I think one of the things to always remember is not to judge others. Being open, we all have our own human and spiritual experience. So if we learn to respect each other and really uplift each other and support each other in our beliefs and being open and having conversations, I mean, it just opens up a whole different dimension for us, right? And I think faith is a huge part in our healing process, and so it's something that we need to really, really explore intentionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great. So I know you talked a little bit about friends.
Yes.
Previously, and how you worked on being more intentional with the group of people that you spent time with.
Right.
So what does your friend group currently look like, and how do you, being a busy business owner, a husband, a father, a Muay Thai artist, how do you make time for friendships?
Well, I think it takes intention, it takes effort just to cultivate any relationship, like in a marriage. It takes effort. It takes effort from both parties, right? Same thing with a friendship. We talk, we text, and then we make these moments work. We get together, and it takes effort from both parties. And so you want to find someone that not only is willing to put in that work, but also uplift you, and you be able to uplift that person. Just like in a coaching situation, if you're a coach or a training partner, let's use that example. If you're a training partner, be the partner that you will like in return, right? So be the friend that you would like in return. And so it takes effort, it takes intention, but then you also have to be very particular with who you hang out and how much time and why you're there. And every time we see each other, we're talking about our plans. Yeah. We're talking about family. We're talking about finances and friendship and fitness. We're talking about all these things that really matter to us. Yeah. So I think it's really important to make those things clear. Mm-hmm. And but I think you build that trust and those connections, and you never know where those friendships will take you.
Yeah, that's great. I really like that. I like your perspective on being the friend that you want.
Exactly.
So you are that friend to someone else, and possibly, most likely, they're going to return that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's really important to keep that balance, right? And be intentional and really appreciating that person. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. All right. So before we wind things down, I do want to give you the opportunity to talk to our viewers, to our listeners, a little bit more about your business. Let folks know where they can find you, and what type of services you guys can provide.
Yes, for sure. So our company is Legacy Groundworks. It's my brothers and I, Victor and Jaime, who I love and appreciate and respect so much. They're both my right-hand men, right? It's my brother Victor calls us the three amigos. We've gone through so much together, and we love what we do. We offer, we build outdoor living environments, but also commercial, anywhere from irrigation system to the grading to the planting and everything in between. Also the maintenance phase of it, custom residential projects as well. We specialize in stonework and things like that. We're currently working on a new website. It's under construction. We'll provide that at a later time. But I'm on Instagram. I can be found there, and I just post everyday things with my kids, myself, the way I train, the way I eat, the way I live, and just kind of give people a glance into my life, because I think you can take, a little bit out of everyone's experience and apply it. On Instagram, I'm under Gilberto _ Rodriguez .911, being my sobriety date. But yeah, you can find me online, and I love to meet and get to know other people, for sure.
Yeah, excellent, great. Yeah, and I appreciate you offering, to talk to folks and provide guidance or advice.
For sure.
If they're having similar struggles. And I'll definitely put your social media and your website link in the description here.
Perfect. Yes, I think it's important to share our resources, right? And so, yeah, you'll find me on social media. And, I appreciate you for having me. This is a good opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So to wrap things up here, I like to wrap the podcast up with, just 3 really quick off-the-cuff questions that
Awesome.
Our guests don't know what these questions are going to be, but I think it helps the audience get to know you a little bit better. You
Perfect.
ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. So the first question is, what is your all-time favorite movie?
Oh, man. Well, this could be a tricky one, because as of now, it's Kung Fu Panda 3, but I know Kung Fu Panda 4 is coming out next month, so we're really looking forward to that, my family and I. But I love Kung Fu Panda just in general, the whole collection, because it's got I relate to it through martial arts. We love that, but also the quotes, the messages that are there, the hidden gems that we can. I utilize those all the time with our kids at our martial arts school. Right? I bring up quotes, and I'm like, hey, do you think Kung Fu Panda will kick like that? Come on, you can do better than that. Right. And I motivate them, and they can relate, and it's fun, but it's also real life knowledge and little gold nuggets that we can utilize.
Right. You know what? I was shocked. I was listening to a different podcast not long ago, and the guy brought up a quote from Kung Fu Panda, something along the lines of, "The future's a mystery. The past is history. All we have is the gift of the present."
Exactly. That's a beautiful reflection. I mean, it just shows how living present. It's just a beautiful opportunity to really enjoy a fulfilling life. And so, those another quote that I really like is, if you only do what you can, you will never be more than you are now.
That's
right.
Great.
So that's something that I always apply. I continuously push myself to learn, to grow, and to adapt to my new circumstances, and to just be a better version of myself every day, so that I can be, show up better for my wife, my kids, my parents, my friends, and just our community in general.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I didn't realize that quote was in there as well. I did see the first Kung Fu Panda movie, but now there's going to be a fourth one.
Yes.
I got some catching up to do.
You got to catch up, yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay, great. So next question I have for you is, what is your all-time favorite book?
Oh, it's got to be The Alchemist. That was the first book I dove into as I got sober. I began listening to YouTube interviews and podcasts and motivational videos. And in one of those interviews, it was, they were interviewing Will Smith, and he mentioned the book and how it impacted him. And so I looked it up, found the book, and it was life-changing, because I could relate in different ways, right? Being a kid, growing up in a that type of environment, and having challenges, but still feeling a sense of connection to a higher power, to God, to the universe, to life, and appreciating all those elements. And so I really related to that. And the story is just, the way it's put together, the messages, and just it opened up my mind to a whole different world, which is, encapsulated in books. And I just fell in love with books.
Yeah, wow. That's interesting story here for our viewers, for our listeners. So you and I, we were talking, we had a conversation over the phone probably a couple months ago now.
Yes.
And as we were talking, I'm downloading an audiobook, because I knew I had to drive somewhere. I was going to drive for a couple of hours, and I usually like to listen to audiobooks while I'm driving. Yes. And I downloaded The Alchemist, and you hadn't mentioned it to me.
Right.
We hadn't talked about it, but I had heard from other folks as well that it was a good book, and yeah, such a great book. I listened to it. I got to listen to it again, because there's just so much depth there in that book. But it is an easy book to listen to, an easy book to read. It's not long, but just so powerful. Such a great message.
So many things that we can take out of that, and there's so many ways that we could all relate to it. We all have a dream. We all have goals. We all have a journey. And so how are you going to apply that, and how are you going to relate And so, yeah, it's a powerful book, and that's just, it's so interesting how you downloaded the book, and then we talked some time later, and we bring up the topic. You know, as they say, great minds think alike.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, great. Awesome. All right, so last question for you. If you could interview anyone, either alive or dead,
Yes.
who would it be?
Oh, I think about this all the time. Pancho Villa, the Mexican revolutionary general, who would abstain from alcohol too. He was sober. He wouldn't allow his soldiers in his army to drink. He knew the negative effects of drinking and alcoholism. Whenever he would take over a town, when during the revolution, he would get rid of all the alcohol in that town to make sure that his team, his army, was not drinking, and they were ready and prepared to do whatever task was at hand. And so, his favorite drink, I think, was like strawberry milkshakes, and he would cross the border periodically to Texas, and he would enjoy his strawberry smoothies. But I think his mindset, the way he approached challenges, the creativeness, the out-of-the-box thinking that he had, but also the courage to do whatever had to do to accomplish what he did for our country.
Wow, that's so interesting. I did not know that he was that he would abstain from alcohol. I didn't know that about him. And talk about a stressful life. I mean, he had every reason to want to drink.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that would be an interesting interview.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gilberto, for being here, and I appreciate your time. And,
thank you for your time.
And look forward to talking again soon.
Likewise. Thank you.